What's up, guys? It's Rich Duperbash. I'm out in the garage. Just want to do kind of a custom build overview. I've had a little bit of downtime in light of everything that's going on in the world. I want to give a shout out to RCbashing the Kraton. What's up, brother? He really inspired me to do this build. Many of you guys know the Trugified Typhon is pretty much my favorite RC of all time. That's essentially what this build is built off of. And it's amazing how quickly time passes, but it's been just about 3.5 years now that I actually built my son my first Trugified Typhon build back in 2016 using these Badland 3.8s. It's kind of just gone full circle. I also want to give a shout out to Dwight at Fast Track Hobbies in Rocklin, California. That's my local hobby shop. He recently kicked down a box of used and actually some brand new ARRMA parts that were out of the package. Basically fell into the shop's hands from our friend Mark, who passed away. So God rest his soul. Shout out to my Italian RC brother, David. This is a logo for his channel. Again, it's DRRC Stunt. Definitely check it out. He's got some great stuff. As I took my time with this build, it was from the ground up, basically just a bare chassis. Most of the parts on here are brand new. Diving into it, guys, first off, the body. You guys have seen these before. This is a eBay special. These run like, I think, 23, 25 bucks. The bodies are a little bit flimsy, a little bit thin. I'm not too worried about it. I'm going to reinforce the crud out of it. I'll go over kind of how I mounted it. Essentially, I did a little custom job. I'll share with you guys from underneath. These are the little Proline body caps. And then in the rear, I went ahead and I had to cut out the engine compartment and just use this one little flat spot. So here's a shot of the M2C Goliath Series chassis. Again, this is a Typhon chassis that works both on the Senton and the Outcast. Basically, I had bought this to put on my limited edition Outcast, but I ended up testing Mitch's Speed chassis on that one. These are Mojave arms, links, and drive shafts. You definitely have to trim the chassis to give clearance for these arms. I ended up actually grinding with my bench grinder, took quite a bit off the ears here, and I also took a hand file. You can't see, but I filed back this rear part of the ear probably a good 1 or 2 millimeters, just so it'll clear the crease of the arms. After modifying the chassis and having my droop screw set here so I'm not tugging on my rod ends, I still have plenty of droop in the back. When you're starting a build from scratch, the way I like to do it generally is I go ahead and build my diffs first and get my shocks put together and just kind of set them aside, being careful not to mix up my front and rear. As far as if you're doing your diff cups, obviously you don't want to mix up your oils. I'll build like the entire front and rear of the truck off the chassis, and then I'll end up just kind of putting it in, try not to forget my center drive shafts at the end, of course. You don't want to have your fasteners cranked down until you have all your holes lined up, and then go back and go ahead and cinch those down. So here's a quick pan of the inside of the rig, guys. You'll definitely notice I've put some upgrades on this sucker. If you guys want to run stock chassis, that's up to you. I definitely, if you're going to bash hard, I can't say it enough times, these 4mm Goliath Series chassis are just a killer investment. Essentially, they just prevent all kinds of collateral damages. I've got kind of a combination of different aftermarket parts on here. Voltage Hobbies rear suspension mounts. Got my GKA wing support bracket, whatever you want to call it. Also have Voltage Hobbies braces, both front and rear. You'll notice I did have to drill this through with a 4mm. Mitch with M2C Racing, he's offering this with a 4mm already threaded, which is really nice, and he sends out a drill bit to kind of just drill through your top plate. This is an aluminum upper mount that I got right here, and down below I also have an aluminum aftermarket 7075 steering rack. Decided to go ahead and use the Hot Racing diff cases, both front and rear. These cases, I think I started using them on my Outcast at least a year plus. Haven't had any issues with them at all. Definitely, it's nice because they have the oversized bearing in the front for your input gear. The other thing is basically you don't strip any holes out. I don't have any issue with the stock bulkheads, but over time when you just beat the crud out of them or go sending them, eventually, just like any plastic part, it does eventually wear down. I like to use at least 2 to 3, preferably 3 of the 0.1mm bearing shims on the crown gear side bearing. I've just found that for getting a nice mesh between the crown gear and input gear that it works perfectly. I've got a Voltage Hobby Servo Mount. This is one of the V1s. I actually had to use some spacers to raise it up a little bit. And if you look at the front here, guys, I just wanted to say the ZRS bladderless shock system from Mitch Looper, M2C Racing, is just absolutely awesome. I spent a lot of hard time and work getting these pistons dialed in for production, and I gotta say, I'm running them on 3 or 4 of my ARRMAs now, and it's just, what you're left with is a totally plush platform. I'm running stock 40 weight, and just to make sure I've got good chassis slap both front and rear. It's like normal with the Trugified Typhon. You essentially add about a 1/2 inch of width on each side by adding Kraton hubs, hexes, and stub axles. That combined with the Mojave arms and these Badland 3.8s really gives this truck just a great stance. So it's not too wide, not too narrow. It's essentially kind of like a Mini Outcast. I'm running the ARRMA HD rod ends. They're ultra beefcake, along with the 6.8 millimeter steel pivot balls in here. It's actually, there is a little bit of rub on the spring collar with these Mojave arms. So just be aware of that. You can either file the collar down, or you could put a little divot in your arm. For now, I'm leaving mine as is just to see how it goes, but I did notice there is just a pinch of binding here. I've got my standard Typhon T-Bone Basher 6S bumper. I've had great luck with these. You'll notice I'm running Mitch Looper's M2C hinge pins as A and B block, and these have the Delrin insert, so they're butter smooth. This kind of a through system that makes swapping your arms, etc., really simple. Notice I did a little customization. This is the same type of bracket system I used on my Orange Darling, and it works killer just because these Proline slash body mounts, they have a ton of give, which is perfect for, you know, when you're just having hard rolls or impacts. This is 1/2 inch by 3/4 inch angle aluminum, and then essentially you're drilling 2 holes through the top, and then I'm using my, these are the Mitch Looper's M4 standoffs. These things are ultra beefcake, but essentially I just drill a hole so I can mount it through there as well. And hopefully that's getting a decent shot of the setup. As on these rear mounts, just the way the bug body sits, I ended up essentially using some of the longer ARRMA mounts that extend and curve up just a little bit. And then you'll see these just basically kind of almost rest on the cap here, which I don't think is going to be a big deal because I am going to make one of my little custom center body supports. For diffs, guys, I'm running my standard 50,000 up front, 200 in the center, 20,000 in the rear. Just wanted to mention, a little while back I started using this new orange Permatex, this orange thread locker, and it's supposed to be a little bit stronger than blue, but not quite as brutal as red. So far I've had good luck with it. Nevertheless, I still recommend you guys definitely use heat like a small butane torch when you're working on your pinion gears and your outdrive grub screws. Here's a shot of a couple of the torches that I use on my RCs. This one's a little Gardner Bender. These are both little butane style flames here. This one doesn't have quite the power of this one here. I got this one at Harbor Freight. This one throws a little bigger flame. Sometimes you want a more concentrated flame. I can get a little bit more heat out of this guy, but again, I heat up all my pinion gear, all my pinion grub screws and my outdrives, etc. I hate stripping screws. I also use this on my motor mount bolts. Here's a shot of my favorite grease. This is a calcium sulfonate marine grease by Nano Pro MT. I used to be able to buy this at like O'Reilly's and other auto shops, but unfortunately now I'm just finding it online. But without a doubt, this has done a great job of just keeping dirt and filth out of my diff cases. And on that note, I want to give another shout out to my brother Stéphane Saucier out of Canada. I went ahead and used some of these 6S diff case gaskets for the first time on this one. And here's a shot of his diff cup gaskets. I've been using these for, I think, at least over a year now. And you'll notice, if you guys have tried these before, they're definitely a lot beefier than the stock ones. Another tip, guys, I've shared this multiple times in other videos, but it's worth mentioning again. Definitely get your hands on some yoga mat from Walmart or wherever, and just cut this out. Essentially just trace your lipo and run these in the bottom of your tray. It will definitely help extend the life of your lipos from just harsh impacts, etc. Make sure you actually put a pack inside your rig when you're kind of setting your ride height. I like to set my shocks so that essentially on rebound, I'm right about arms level, both front and rear, but you'll see how much more planted this is with the pack in here. All right, guys, I think that's going to be it. Absolutely cannot wait to get this sucker in the dirt. Unfortunately, it's raining, I think, pretty much all weekend, so we'll see how this next week turns out. But I just, again, want to wish you guys the best of luck with everything that's going on. Please just keep isolated, wash your hands, and be safe. So, all right, guys. Take care. Late. Oh my gosh, guys. Oh!